Welcome to Talking to Grandma, a weekly podcast about raising and teaching bilingual and multilingual kids. I'm Rebecca De Leon, the producer of this show, and the creative and communications director at Bilingual Generation. Whether you're a parent, grandparent, teacher, or just someone who cares about language and culture, this podcast is for you. Together with our guests, we'll explore how to support bilingualism in ways that affirm identity and strengthen community. Today we hear from Sofia, a bilingual mother of three, an entrepreneur, and community educator. She's passionate about personal growth, creativity, and conscious living. And as an aspiring ontological life coach, she blends her lived experience with coaching to support families and youth in navigating emotions, identity, and purpose.
I did have a phase when I was a teenager that I didn't want to talk Spanish at all. I was talking to my mom in English because I was dealing with the identity, was like, hey, I really don't want to talk Spanish. I kind of feel embarrassed. There was all of these things on my head going on. Eventually, I was like, I really love my culture. I really have seen how people embraced it.
Through her workshops, coaching, and community partnerships, Sofia works to create safe and empowering spaces where both youth and parents can grow, connect, and rediscover their inner voice. Stick around to hear Sofia's inspiring journey of identity, language, and embracing her culture. Let's get into it. Thank you, Sofia, for joining us today. We like to ask everybody that we meet with to tell us a little bit about their own experience with language loss and preservation. So why don't you get us started?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sofia. I was born in Mexico, and my journey just navigating language overall started when I came to the country when I was 9, migrated from Mexico to United States, and I had only Spanish with me. And then being immersed to the culture of the public school system, I had to learn English. I think I didn't know what I was gonna get myself into. I didn't know I was not gonna be able to learn Spanish more than what I had already learned. Get there, and I found myself that I was not the only one who had immigrant parents or have just Spanish speaking family members. I was just kind of navigating with hand gestures, things like that. And I think remember there was a couple kids who kind of knew that I was new to the country, and they were just kind of translating for me, So I was just learning how to navigate and somebody advocate for me by translating. And eventually, I get to high school. I had already learned that being bilingual is really important in this country, So that's when I kind of just started um have both English and Spanish. I did have a phase when I was a teenager that I didn't want to talk Spanish at all. I was talking to my mom in English because I was dealing with the identity, was like, hey, I really don't want to talk Spanish. I kind of feel embarrassed. There was all of these things on my head going on, but being somebody that just has Spanish but also is learning English and trying to fit in. So eventually I was like, I really love my culture. I really have seen how people embraced it. And I also started seeing how my friends who were not born in Mexico, who were Mexican American, were trying to embrace a culture that was I guess passed on. That was these kids want to have their other parents' cultures, they're embracing it. So it just gave me that ability to be I really embrace my culture. And then eventually in college, that's when I joined a Latina sorority. So that's when also kind of helped me, being Latina and calling this college campus, navigating what being bilingual is, and then eventually just kind of started more grounding to, really want to keep being more um into my Spanish, right? So I want to bring it professionally into settings. I was learning about how other people wanted to preserve Spanish in other people by communicating it, how important it is. So that's what it kind of just stuck with me. I was just planting those seeds. I really want to have a Spanish. I keep learning and writing, and I had always have communications with people in Spanish. And then eventually, when I graduated from college, I had already 2 kids with me. So that's when I run into the program of bilingual generation. And it was just kind of I remember getting the email, they're like, hey, you joined the cohort. And I was like, okay, I'll join this bilingual cohort because I had already made it on my mind that, I really wanted to teach my kids Spanish before they learn English because I really wanted to communicate with my grandma and my mom, who are only Spanish speaking. So that kind of just helped me. I was already talking to my son, who was the oldest one, in like English and Spanish. And because I was like seeing how other people like would communicate with their kids, I was like, okay, I'll just kind of say water, agua, like back and forth. But he wasn't really like talking at that time. Eventually, when I had my second daughter, and that's when I was put into the program that was like, okay, really wanted to learn Spanish, but I also don't want to confuse them. So how can I make them more empowering by, that I don't feel bad when we go to places and I have to like always translate back and forth. So just going through the program gave me the structure to be like, I really embrace my culture. I really want them to get all of that, kind of hands-on, eating the foods, listening to the music. So that's when I really made up my mind, really, okay, like this first 5 years until they go to kindergarten, we're just gonna talk Spanish at the house, So everybody, even my husband was on board. He's also bilingual, but he was also kind of like with the same as me, we're like talking to them in English some days in Spanish. I was like, it's really important for me to get our mother's tongue, like his mom also, he comes from a Mexican family as well. So it's like, really want you to like teach our kids Spanish, so we really have to just always talk to them in Spanish, shows in Spanish, music. So that's when they give me that, just feel more confident, that I really want to get to know how Spanish it was important to me. And eventually they were getting the hands on. Eventually, after my son started talking, it was all Spanish. And now he's 5 and he knows how important it is because he calls himself he's bilingual. And even like now that he's going to kindergarten, he's like, I was like, hey, let's talk let's start practicing English because you're gonna go to school. He's like, no, I just want to talk Spanish at home. So when I told that to other friends and family members, they're like, he's really comfortable in Spanish, which is rare because I have other friends who have small, younger kids, and they're like, no, my kid doesn't really want to learn Spanish, or they just talk, they understand it, but they reply to me in English. Which is my son is a different case. He's like, I really want to just talk Spanish. He loves the music, he loves the food. So whenever we go outside, he runs into kids who talk to him in English. He doesn't like fully talk to them in English yet, but he kind of like nods, he makes up his word. So I know he's capable of learning them too because he asked me like, hey, how do you say this? Or hey, so how do I say this in English? And he's like, I try to like make him like he feels confident, not shy about it. Like, and it was like a learning experience because sometimes he would get sad. He's like, Mom, this kid don't want to play with me because I'm not only speaking Spanish. I was like, hey, it's fine. You're bilingual. You can talk in English and Spanish. And it just kind of reframing that again over and over. He feels really comfortable. And now my daughter also, and I have 3 kids. So my little one, he's also on the right. So just also, learning Spanish, the music, the same thing kind of what I applied with my firstborn, just apply it to my other 2 daughters. So it was really helpful getting that what message I wanted to send to my kids that you're gonna go out into the world and learn 2 languages. It's just gonna bring you more opportunities and just more connections, with people who might only speak one language, but then you can connect with both of them fully and comprehend things in 2 different ways. So I think that is really what I'm amazed to stay with both languages. And even my professional setting, I always say like that's my asset, being bilingual, that I can read and write fluently, and I just love how the brain is able to put those things at the same time and how fast it works because you're just like listening and then you have to translate, and I'm like, I just get amazed how it just comes all at the same time, and giving those kind of things with my kids as well to be like, hey, you sometimes you're gonna have teachers who are bilingual, and look, they're using it with their students and they can communicate, or you can communicate with grandma, or you can communicate with your friends, and he learns, he feels comfortable when he meets other people or other kids who are bilingual. He feels like, wow, look, mom, they're like us, or they have English and Spanish. So I think that is really amazing to see when you can connect with other people who know you're also in the same path as raising bilingual kids.
I love that. I love that so much. My mom also immigrated to the US when she was 9. And so she
Hmm.
navigated that need to fit in and learn English really quickly because to survive, she had to learn it. And so a lot of the work that we do at Bilingual Generation, my why for doing it is to support people like her and you to be able to have resources and the tools to pass on their language to their kids. You're also bringing up a point where it's not just learning the language and knowing the language and keeping it, it's also navigating the world around you. And so the community that you're in can sometimes shift those mindsets of you wanting to not speak Spanish anymore. Your kids might experience on the classrooms that they're in or the kids that are around them. It feels like you have some tools like in your pocket of, making sure that they're confident in it, that it's a superpower, that it's something that's an asset, and making sure that messaging is always in their head. So I love that. I hope parents are listening because those are some really good points to make for bilingualism in general. I think that you've touched on this a little, like how you've worked to pass on that heritage language to your kids. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced early on raising bilingual children, and where did you turn? What kind of support in your community did you find?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is the community. The community is, I guess, small, you know. I have three little ones, so it's just like I have three kids that I have different personalities, you know, like having to think about what kind of school system they're gonna go into, like if one of them if it doesn't fit for one of them. So just always kind of like thinking ahead of all three that, you know, that best serve their needs. And I think it's sometimes just harder because parents are like Mexican or Mexican American, they're raising kids, but oh, they're already learning English, you know? So it's like, how can we have those conversations like, oh, what has worked for you or what hasn't worked for you, without making it such like a competition also with other kids? My kids don't feel like they have to put the Spanish aside. Like if they want to go and play with the kids, they have to just use English because the kids just speak English. They're very expressive in Spanish. So it's kind of like having to shout out their personality because they're, you know, the kids only know so much of part of English. And, you know, just reaching out to programs. I'm really like a resourceful person. I'm always looking for activities in both the languages. Like I go to the library, I go to social media where they can get the information that I can give them of both best of both worlds. You know, like hey, let's go to the library, but it's just gonna be English. And we did it. We went to a show once where they had like brought snakes, and I told my kids, we know, you know, we're gonna see reptiles, but the person who's gonna talk is just gonna be in English. And my son was really like amazed, and he was like, okay, like I really want to participate because it was like your questions and we'll get an answer and then you can learn. And I was like, hey, you know, like along the way you have a question, let me know and I can translate it. And he's like, okay, I have a question. And I was like, but you know how you're gonna say it? He's like, no. But I was like, but he was willing to participate. So I was like, I don't want to take his ability to not participate because he didn't have the English. I was like, hey, you know, just tell me what you want to say and I'll translate it. He's like, no, you teach me how I translate it my way. So he told me in Spanish. I was like, hey, this is how you say it. And he took it back and he said it in English. But I was like, hey, you know, I'm here, I can help you. And then I just try to like give him that confidence. So that's one of the things that I have always make them feel, you know, anywhere we go, have the confidence in community places or just, you know, places where Spanish might not be welcome in a way, you know, like when we go to the doctors and places like that, like I'd always make sure like they can voice out their needs in the language that they prefer. I'll just always make sure, you know, that they're heard. So I think that is what I always make them, you know, like you anywhere you go, advocate for yourself, even though you might not have the words, but you can always like find a way around. Being the first gen in my family to be first Mexican American in here, it has been like, okay, you know, I don't want to put my experience into them. Like they have their own experiences. They're gonna make what feels more comfortable for them. You know, if it's at one point they do just want to use English at home, but then we can navigate it. So I think just all of those tools that I have see and heard from other people raising bilingual kids is what I like take it and I guess make my community and create the community I want my kids to live and be part of. So I think all of those tools have helped me create in a way the community I want them to make them feel welcome.
I love it. You made some really key points. Like parenting shouldn't be a competition, it should be a community. And I feel like
Hmm.
that's even more important when you're raising bilingual kids. Finding that as a community and not competition is like super helpful. But you also made another point about just giving your kids the freedom to use their full linguistic repertoire. So every
Hmm.
language in any word in their brain that can come out, whether it doesn't matter what language, like however they need to communicate is super important at home and in the classroom. And so I'm glad that you're instilling that advocacy in them, like use your language, whatever language it is, because they will use it all. They'll use it all. And that's
Hmm.
how we continue to see that language grow is by them using all of their language. That's a great approach to giving your kids the freedom to just choose which language they want to use and how they want to use
Mhm.
it. That confidence. I love the story of him feeling confident enough to ask the question. So you yourself have some work that you do in ontological coaching. How does your training in ontological coaching inform the way you support families navigating language, identity, emotional growth? And can you give some examples of your work with parents and youth?
Yeah, so anthology coaching was presented by my mom. It was in a time where I had just had my third child. So I was just navigating, raising, being a mom of three, having just still, be at home full time, but also had, even since I graduated from school, from college, I had already my two kids, but I had made the decision to stay home and we'll navigate what is this work from home style was going to be as an immigrant, because it's really has some limitations. It's like, okay, I have to work for my own uh when finding my own, I guess, connections, and we'll go from there. But anthology coaching has been a really a great tool that I rely on, because it is really navigating how language um is preserved in us, and how also language either can create or destroy, because either the words that you say, so being really intentional with what words I'm using with my kids, versus what I grew up with. We would say have sayings, we have ways of saying things, we have ways to, I guess, label people, so having those things being more shown to me, how either I wanna, whatever I would say, to my kids, it would could affect them to them. It's like, do I really want to say this to them, or have to take a step back, be like, maybe it's just me having three kids on the summer break, having, a lot of us, it's just having to take a step back and maybe choose what words could be more, I guess, see him what he could change, like as in his behavior, So also another way is that how we intervene in the world. So, as a person having to come to this country and have this story already given out to me. Okay, I'm the first gen, I'm Mexican, I can only speak Spanish. It was like kind of like, okay, that's not my identity. So it's a way that we can question things, that you can get to those results that you want. And it's like not absolutely ways of thinking, because sometimes we think that this is the only way, this is the only truth that we can see, versus in ontological coaching is like, okay, you can question it and you can always reframe it to what suits you. I've been doing this work for about almost a year and a half, working on my certification of being certified as a life coach. And the work that I been part of that, getting that certification, it has been to do about a number of sessions that is kind of like your practice in order to go out in the world and work on what you want to like do. For me instance, I'm very passionate with nonprofits and for profit, so like I love the entrepreneur spirit. Like I think growing up with the mom who is a single mom raising two kids, two daughters, it was always like she was hustling, having jobs here and in Mexico as well, and just having her spirit kind of put onto me as well, that like I always been involved in community, which is like volunteering, being part of parenting committees, having my kids in programs where they know they're gonna skills for literacy, English. So you just kind of be involved in those programs has helped me to really, it goes back to how I want to create a community where like, maybe this is not out here. Maybe how can I, with the knowledge that I have, with the passion that I have, for families, tools to just live a life that they really want, if it's a life that you want peace to hold you, or happiness, you can always strive to that if you really just kind of um, know that that's a possibility. We usually think because there's limitations of the or our story, like, oh, we're limited to only sticking to this survival mode, and in anthology coaching, it's like, no, you can always access the possibilities and infinite possibilities that you want to see, and you just have to really align, like the words that you're saying, the actions, and all of that. It goes in your thoughts, go all together. Again, being bilingual, I just love it, that I can translate in both languages the work that I'm doing and connect with people, outside. There's a book called Tiger, Tiger, Is It True? And that it kind of talks about what we do, which is a lot of questioning, like questioning our beliefs, our declarations, our language, what is it, how our language is either gonna mold us, So I've been really more practicing with my kids, when they see certain things, I'm like, hey, maybe we can use another word. Oh, this is not the word that maybe you want to use, or tell me what is it that you really want to communicate, because sometimes they're kids and they get really frustrated because sometimes they don't know how to express it, or you're not getting their points. So I was like, hey, like, let's take a step back. What is it that you're feeling? Let's work it around. And I question them, I question them in certain things that like they're hearing outside, how we view certain things, And they do question me, like they're like, "Oh, what is this, mom? Like, what does that mean to you?" So like we go back and forth. So I think it's really I just I think our relationship has been more fundamentally, having this conversation that they're really open and asking me questions and I can ask them questions. So I think that is one of the things that I love about parenting, that you don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but along the way, you take what works and you apply it. And if it doesn't work, then reframe it, work and kind of redesign what you want, your structure with I have 3 kids, so they all have different personalities. I think them teaching me, this is what works for me and this is what doesn't work for me. Like if you apply it to my sister, but it doesn't work for me, but it's not like always like trying to compare them, 'Cause I think the first truth of parenting, if you have more than one kid, like they're always, all kids are going to be different. Like they can all like different foods and they come from the same mom, they live in the same household, but like they're all just gonna like different things. Are just accepting that is the truth that they like and respecting that, and vice versa, that the respect that I give them is the respect that they're giving me back, and just teaching that, and once I get my certification is to really share this to other parents, and which is like really practical tools that you can use on your daily life, your professional life, in all areas of work, So this is really for anybody who wants to have that like more deep dive, learning about my life, my story, come to the country, having kids. I think has helped me, like, okay, what is it that I want to design now with my life, with my kids? What kind of life, what kind of person I want to be with them and with the world. So I think just questioning that in the leadership that I want to teach them. And then I think one of that is being bilingual, like how we want to be presented and how we want to put ourselves, first, and then meet our needs first in order to meet other people's needs. So I think knowing that part of ourselves, what is it that I really want? What is it as like as a mom that I want? When they go to the playground and they see kids acting up, be like, Mom, what could that? Maybe that kid is tired. Like they know, like maybe he needs to take a nap. So it's like things like that they question instead of judging it, like, or like they want to bring solutions, just always letting them be creative. I think creativity is one of the things that ontology coaching has really made me really feel like is the biggest tool, in anything. When you open the door of creating a world, that you want to live in, that you are capable of, creating, it just gives your mind more like at peace instead of playing the victim, like because of this, because I was born in this family, or because I don't have this. Like, take the seat and be like, no, I'm responsible of how I want to create my world.
I love that. I think that the approach of questioning like the messages that we're being fed is super important as parents who want to raise bilingual, because there's a lot of myths and like
Hmm.
messages out there that it can confuse your kids raising bilingual kids, or it can set them back in their learning, or
Hmm.
there's so many myths and messages that you have to question as a parent who wants to have this journey. So I love that approach that you're bringing to it, where you're
Hmm.
saying, like, envision it and be creative what that vision can be and the possibilities of that.
Yeah.
And we can make that happen. So I love that. I think that's some great advice for parents who are constantly hearing these messages, that they can question it and they can do something different and it's possible. Speaking of advice, what advice would you give them if they're feeling isolated or uncertain or unsupported
Hmm.
in their journey?
I think the first thing it would be to question your intention. I think everybody has a different intention. So based on those answers, you get those tools and the answers that you're looking for. Because for me, my experience coming to this country could be different from somebody who is already like second generation in their family tree, like my grandparents came to the country, then my parents were born here. So it's like a different, so really like questioning why is it that you really want to do this? Is it because it's gonna look good on resume in your resume and your kid's resume? Like, yes, maybe that, but how you're gonna work that way that it doesn't feel like so tiring, because it is sometimes like a lonely journey. Everybody learns different, so I guess for some people strictly, immersing themselves in the culture or, maybe putting their kids in dual language schools, it's all part of that. At the end, having some words and that you're proud of that and that your kids feel proud of that instead of like, oh no, I'm a no salvo kid. Kids are proud of that. It's not an offensive thing to be a no salvo kid. It's like, no, well, we have some words. I'm proud of the culture that I come from. I love my culture, and I also might not have fully that I'm not from here, from there, and that's okay. I think making those passes can give parents the ability that your kids have some words and what in the however they're using that they're comfortable. So making a comfortable, safe, empowering place, and that all of that starts at home. Because whatever they feel at home is that it's what's going to hold them. Because if they don't have that, they're just always going to be on the search of wanting to try to fit in at school and other places with friends. So I think that is the advice to our parents to really have grounded our intentions. Is it, do I want my kids to only speak Spanish? Because if they don't speak Spanish, I'm gonna be super scared that they're gonna lose it. Like, you're already in the state of fear because you're
Mhm.
like, oh no, they're gonna get grounded because they already talk English when grandma's around. Like, no, making that like the way they're communicating, it's also communicated, and that is okay as well. It's functional for them that if they only have certain words or they understand Spanish but they don't talk it, like that's fine. Like some people had a different way, but that doesn't make them any less or any more than people. I think just having that the value that no matter how many languages you speak or if you only speak one language, like that's also fine, but working that with the creativity again, having creative that okay, it's never too late to learn another language, but having that if it's like after they turn 5, oh, now I want to teach them Spanish, like okay, and also having the consistency, like if you want to be intentional, consistency, about the integrity, which is okay, I want them to be more into learning about their cultures, so things like that. And, being compassionate with themselves, that everybody has a different process, Some kids do learn both languages faster. Some kids have different abilities to be immersed into more than two languages, It could be the third language, and then also part of that, it's also their process. So kind of bring back like there's no competition, Some kids love to just use one language, and that's also okay. So I think for parents, it's just really be intentional on what are we really teaching our kids and why are we teaching, because we heard somebody that is doing it and we have to do it this way. Like, no, I think having that ability to know that in your household, we are the creators of how we want to create our lifestyles, to really is it to shame each other because they're not learning this language that we want them to, or that we're embracing them, that praising them for what they're actually doing. I know it took me a while to understand how important is praising, because I come from a culture that you're only praised if you're really doing it like 100%, perfect, which is impossible, So it's like you're always trying to like look out for that recognition. Like you always want to be recognized until you do perfect, which is not. It's not until you recognize yourself that you're really doing what is functional to you. That's the recognition that you need in the moment.
I love that. I feel like that's very healing to remind people to give yourself grace and nobody's journey looks the same.
Hmm.
I've felt that too growing up, not speaking Spanish, but my mom being
Hmm.
from Mexico, that's her first language. But having to give myself grace, like I understand it fully, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
I can watch movies and telenovelas in Spanish, and that's a good
Hmm.
thing. I'm grateful for those things, even though I'm not fully native Spanish speaker. I'm still grateful for what
Hmm.
I have, and I think that's a great reminder. Like, be grateful for the words that they do know and the connections that they do have to their language
Hmm.
growing up. So thank you for sharing that. And another part is always like focusing on the joy of the language and not the negativity
Hmm.
of it of or being in competition for it. I think that's another really key point is the language is joy and our culture is joyful and we should
Mhm.
approach language learning in a joyful way and not punishment or negative or
Mm-hmm.
have that connotation behind it. Speaking of joy, one of the things that we do at the end of our conversations is ask our guest to share what's bringing you joy these days.
I would say, so my kids are in summer, and I think just, joy, it was that every day is different. And the day before, kind of remind me to the Carol G title, like Mañana será bonito, which is like, it talks about every day is a bonito. There's something within each day that is just, if it's just eating breakfast together, if it's going to the library together, that my kids find the books that they like. So I think, joy is really just living the moment to the fullest. There's things that are happening in my personal life, in the political world, and how much power do I give those to blind me, if I'm listening to the news and then like all of a sudden like my mind is bombarded and just so much information. And of course, we're not change the world, but we're gonna change what we're feeling inside. And that's what really matters, having that kind of switch of like, okay, this is what is going outside, but at the end, how much power do I'm letting that get into me? I don't know what tomorrow's gonna look like. I know this is the moment that I am right now.
Awesome. Wow. That's amazing. I think that's a great reminder for everyone to live in the moment, find the joy in the moments that we're currently in, even when it's kind of grim around us in the world. There's something
Mhm.
that you can find joy in, and it's a great perspective. So thank you for sharing that. Before we end the conversation, I would love for you to share where people can find you.
Yeah, I have my Instagram. I've been working on rebranding my brand, but it's yeah, Sophie Sense. SOFISENCE. Sophie Sense.
Awesome. Well,
So
thank
that's
you.
what is my handle.
We'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can follow you and seek out some of your amazing wisdom that you've shared with us today. So just thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you liked what you heard, take a minute to share this podcast with a friend or colleague. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews help us keep the lights on. We can't do this without your support. Every subscription, share, follow, download, and review make a big difference and helps others find us. Also, we love hearing from you. Tell us what you think of the podcast. Email us at hello@bilingualgeneration.com. You can also slide into our DMs on Instagram at Talking to Grandma. If you're interested in learning more about our workshops and curricular tools for schools serving multilingual and emerging multilingual students, visit our website at www.bilingualgeneration.com or write us at hello@bilingualgeneration.com. Talking to Grandma is owned by Bilingual Generation. The artwork for Talking to Grandma was created by Nancy Guevara. Jen Vargas Pressman is the co-host of this show. And I'm Rebecca De Leon, editor, producer, and co-host. See you in the next episode.